Welcome, everyone, to Spook Doodles, a podcast about fun horror. We explore the fun side of the spooky movies. My name is Lurdiak, my pronouns are he, him, and these are my co hosts.
My name is Freud. My pronouns are he, him.
My name is Namir, and mine are she, her.
My name is Possum, and mine are they and he.
Alright, so today on our first episode ever, we have the pleasure of talking about the movie Fright Night, a personal favorite of mine. It's a movie about a young man, or rather an older boy, if you want to look at it that way, who becomes convinced that his next door neighbor is a vampire. But no one believes him because he's already known to be a bit of a horror-obsessed weird kid. And then the drama ensues. So, I love this movie, as I said. What are y'all's overall takes on the movie?
I thought it was fun. I don't really like vampires that much, to be honest. I think they're kind of like zombies where you can sort of make them, stand for whatever you want, or you can just make them really boring and then just eat people. But this one was kind of interesting. What happens when a vampire ends up in the suburbs? Apparently, apparently no one cares.
That was a pretty new idea at the time.
Yeah.
Vampire movies had fallen out of fashion since the 70s, and most of them were about vampires coming to the big city. But instead of the big city, this one is in the suburbs, so that's interesting.
You get that feeling from the Peter Vincent character. Like, they kind of directly are responding to that. Like, oh yeah, no one likes vampires anymore.
Yeah. Peter Vincent in the film is a horror host who used to act in vampire movies. He's an obvious standing for Peter Cushing, who used to play Van Helsing in the Hammer horror films. And he's very like a has-been, and he's embittered that his type of movie is no longer in fashion. And there's even a direct line in the film where he says, all people want to see these days are masked maniacs hunting down cheerleaders or something like that. So, Freud, what do you think of the movie?
I, like Possum said, I had fun with it. I thought some of the underlying themes about sex and sexuality I was not a huge fan of. There's a lot of the theme of kind of the threatening older gay or bisexual man. Or I guess bisexual, going by the movie. Bisexual, and so it kind of was a bit off-putting in that sense. That some of the stuff felt a little like doesn't age as well for 2021. But a guy did turn into a goopy skeleton, which immediately you add a star and a half for a half star for a skeleton and 1 star for somebody just turning into goop.
Yeah, I agree that the sexual politics of the movie aren't the best. The characters are all in high school, so having the whole Mina standard character be seduced or, controlled by the vampire, depending on how you want to look at it, when the actor is in his 40s, and the vampire character is clearly much older than that. So, that wasn't super comfortable, even though all the actors were over 18. Namir, what do you think of the movie?
I don't love it, but I'll talk about things that I do love about it. The effects, like Freud said, the effects are awesome. They're very fun. And I love the character of his mom, because I love that she fucks, and she's into that dude. And I mean, it's stupid. She shouldn't be. And he's able to protect her. But what?
He's hypnotizing her.
Yeah.
Or something.
I don't know. He's no Colin Farrell, but
That's true.
I think 80s Dandridge is a reasonably well-to-do guy, and he's got a smooth attitude. But yeah, you mentioned the effects. There's not a lot of special effects for like the first 3/4 of the movie. There's a few scenes where the vampire reveals himself, and it looks pretty cool. It's good vampire makeup. They do it with editing. Like, it cuts away, then it cuts back, and he looks like Nosferatu. But it's pretty good. It's better than Buffy for sure. And but then in the last 15, 25 minutes of the movie, they go fucking crazy with the special effects. And you have so much goop and blood and fangs and hair everywhere. It's the best. The movie also has this, like, what I like to call kids on bike vibes. The characters aren't quite that young, but they're still young enough and alienated enough in school that they're pretty much on their own facing this thing and investigating it, and that's really fun. There's a lot of the movie where nobody believes Charlie, the main character, who we're introduced to Charlie pressuring his girlfriend for sex and getting really angry when she turns him down, which is maybe not the best character introduction, but once you get to know him, he's a pretty likable kid. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He really likes horror. He's shy. He's easily distracted. But like he's scared of his neighbor vampire, and you're scared for him because that vampire is really scary.
His main personality trait seems to be horny. Like the first time we see him, he's trying to pressure his girlfriend into sex. Then when he's spying on the neighbor, there's porn mags all over his floor, and he only gets interested when like the neighbor is seducing this woman who is staring directly at this kid as he's watching them. So I wasn't really sure at first, like, okay, is she also a vampire? Because, like, why is she just like, hey kid, here's my titties?
I think she's supposed to be staring into the distance, but yeah, she's looking right at him.
No, because then the vampire guy leans down. He's like, yeah, I can fucking see you.
She's like his property that the vampire is stealing. That's like my main problem with the movie. It's like she's a prop.
Yeah, the girlfriend character is a prop, but Possum's talking about that scene early on where he's peeping out the window. There's a lot of rear window stuff in the early movie that I think is interesting.
They did that in the remake too, didn't they? Where there's a scene where he's like right in front of Colin Farrell.
Yeah. They show the coffin. They show the coffin being dragged in, and that's what distracts Charlie from his makeout session. He's interested in his neighbor having a coffin.
He's like staring out the window because all of this is happening in plain view of his bedroom window. Yeah. Which, like, judging by how far the houses are apart from each other, also in plain view of the street. Pretty much anybody could see this.
Yeah,
but nobody's just paying attention.
It is late at night, but yeah, that's the suburbs. You don't pay attention to your neighbors. That's the theme in the film. But there's that first scene where he sees the coffin being dragged in, and then he sees a hot babe on his way home from school who goes to his neighbor, and he peeps on them making out, and he sees the vampire's vampire hand, and then he hears a horrible scream and stuff. And yeah, of course, being a smart kid, he tries to go to the cops. His girlfriend immediately tells him that he's going to sound crazy. So he decides wisely not to tell the cops that his neighbor's a vampire, but just a murderer. And the cops investigate the neighbor's place, which is when we meet the vampire's boyfriend.
Yeah, this kind of Joel Hodgson looking guy.
Yeah, he's Dandridge is very much like the 80s version of a vampire lord. Like, he dresses all fancy, and he's preening, and he's got his perfect hair. But his attendant / partner is just like a guy wearing flannel.
Yeah, he's Butch.
Great name, though, Billy Cole.
They absolutely give the vibe of a couple. Like, they're very intimate with each other. He's clearly meant to be more like the Renfield character. Like, he's a not quite vampire servant. He's not human either, we find that out. But he can stand in the daylight, but like, their relationship is very close. They joke around with each other. Obviously the master is the master, but it's not the one-sided relationship you expect from a vampire and his servant. It really feels like they're boyfriends, and that they've got an open relationship.
It adds a lot of dimension to his character that he doesn't treat that character like shit, because he could everyone since he's a vampire.
Yeah, he treats most people like shit.
They seem like they're pretty good friends. Like, they're laughing together about how they're going to kill this teenager. And he's like, he's going to prove I'm a vampire. And they're both like, heh. Like,
Classic friendship.
They reminisce about the vampires. Jerry Dandridge's. Well, it's not really explained who she is, but she's probably his ex from when he was little
Yeah.
or something. And they both remember her, so they've been together for a long time. The whole reason he gets obsessed with the girl is because she looks just like his ex, and that's all you need.
And the familiar is not. He's not a vampire, but he's not human either.
I call him a ghoul because in
Yeah.
some vampire lore, the vampire servants aren't human anymore, but they're not vampires either, so they can go in the day.
Yeah.
It's very unclear what he is. All that we know is that he can survive getting shot, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole possibly gay slash bi vibe is also there with my favorite character, Evil Ed. Now, Evil Ed is Charlie's only non-girlfriend friend that we see in the entire film, and he's very clearly a social outcast, and he's got a really hilarious nervous laugh and a creepy sense of humor, and Charlie seems to not really like him that much, honestly. But they're always hanging out, because Charlie has no other friends. And this kid's, he's an outcast, and he's kind of a dick sometimes, and eventually he gets got by the vampire. But it's a very emotional scene because, like, Ed is cornered in an alley, and he's like very scared of the vampire. And Dandridge tells him, "Don't be scared. I've been an outcast like you. Just take my hand. No one will ever be able to hurt you again." I mean, there's some subtext going on in that scene.
It's really sad when he dies in front of Peter Vincent, too.
Oh yeah.
It is the most emotional part of the movie.
And it's interesting because basically from that scene on, he barely interacts with Charlie. You'd think like, oh, my former friend who's a vampire is now like my rival, but no, he becomes the rival of Peter Vincent. They fight like twice, and the only time that Ed interacts with Charlie again is when he when he laughs at him in the back of the Jeep after the girlfriend is kidnapped, which is a great scene.
Yeah, I always figured he was just like enjoying being a vampire, just like, oh no, this is kind of sick.
Yeah, no, he enjoys being a huge dick once he turns evil.
Oh yeah, I mean he goes straight to Peter Vincent. It's just like, help, there's a vampire out here, which is technically true.
Yeah, and then he comes in and he's like, "Oh, I'm the vampire, bitch!" He's doing all these theatrics and laughing maniacally with his big vampire teeth. Which, by the way, I love the vampire teeth in this movie. They have the classic teeth at first, but then, like, it seems every time that a vampire gets a vampire face later on, they have more and more teeth. Until we get to the end where the girlfriend has, like, 50,000 teeth in her mouth.
Her teeth looked pretty cool.
And her mouth is, like, 3 times the size it should be. It's great. That's a great prop. It's on the friggin' poster.
Something I noticed with Ed that I kind of wondered the subtext of, he very frequently comments on Charlie's sexuality. Like, he makes gay jokes.
Yeah. Well, not gay jokes. He makes jokes about Charlie never gonna get laid.
To me, they read as him talking about Charlie being gay, and that kind of made me wonder, is their relationship, did they have some kind of sexual encounter with each other in the past that Charlie's in denial of, and Ed is kind of like, all right, well, I'm going to tease you about it. There's a lot of like weird kind of half-addressed subtext around sexuality with Ed and with some of the other characters.
Well, yeah, they couldn't really come out and say anybody in a movie is gay because it was the 80s, and it would have caused a moral panic.
I also think that Charlie's through line is that he's growing up and he's afraid of sex at the same time as being fascinated by it. So I think that's a little bit of Ed basically taunting him, and it's like, and I don't even want to have sex with girls, because I think that Ed is most likely gay. It's like overcompensating.
I think Ed is probably gay, but every character, all three of our teenagers are kind of afraid of sex in their own way. The girlfriend character, who I guess I'm gonna just keep calling the girlfriend character because that's all she is, and I don't remember her name.
Amy.
Amy.
Yeah, Amy. Uh, she's very hesitant at first, and then multiple times in the movie she tries to be like, "Okay, Charlie, we can go a little further in our relationship. I'm mentally prepared." And then Charlie gets distracted by vampires, and she gets mad.
Yeah, just some random advice for young people that might hear this. If someone yells at you because you don't want to have sex with them, then don't change your mind. You were right. Kick them out.
Yeah, like I said, this one of the least endearing opening scenes to a movie. Like it gives you a really bad impression of Charlie.
It's interesting too that they're hanging out like in his bedroom watching TV, but they've put blankets on the ground or on the floor to make out when there's a bed right there. Like just even
Yeah.
being in bed, he won't do it. And
Well, I thought that maybe they did that like to hide if his mom like came in on and like saw them, but she doesn't seem to care that they're having sex at all.
No,
she
she
seems
teases
supportive
him
of it.
about
Yeah.
she teases her son about his sex life. She's like, "So you two been getting along, you know?"
Yeah.
She's a pretty good
Which
mom.
is kind of that's cool. But it also then it does make it no sense that they're laying on the floor like that.
Or maybe the floor is really comfortable and a good angle to watch the TV.
Maybe it's his childhood bed.
They are watching Fright Night, which is the show within the movie, which is the title of the movie, which is clever and makes no sense in the remake. But yeah, we should probably talk about Peter Vincent more. So Peter Vincent is like Charlie's idol. He's a fictional vampire hunter who says as part of his character that he believes in vampires. So when nobody believes Charlie, he goes to him. And then at first he's, of course I believe in vampires. Now, what do you want my autograph? And then you can see the look on his face, the actor Roddy McDowall, as Charlie keeps talking. And you can see the exact moment where he says to himself, "Oh, this kid is fucking crazy." And he's like, "I'm sorry, I must go." And he wants nothing to do with it. He's a complete fraud. He doesn't believe in vampires. When the vampires actually start showing up, he gets really scared and tries to run away multiple times, which I don't blame
I
him.
honestly can't. I can't blame him for being creeped out by this kid either, because he doesn't just come up and say, "Hey, my neighbor is a vampire." He straight up says, "Hey, my neighbor's a vampire. Will you help me kill him?"
And they do that very clever thing where Peter Vincent gets paid by Amy, who's worried about Charlie's mental health, after she goes to his room and sees like 100,000 million crosses in his room, and garlic and candles everywhere, and like after
It's like, where did he get all that shit?
I don't know, maybe he's got a really big allowance. But after Dandridge confronts Charlie and tells him basically, "I'm gonna fucking kill you someday," uh, he Charlie becomes super terrified and like he's very clearly determined to kill his neighbor or die trying. So they go get this old retired actor who's like, "No, I'm far too busy to work with you. I've got Hollywood contracts waiting for me." And then Amy's like, "Well, I'll pay you." He's like, "How much?"
Yeah, it doesn't even miss a beat.
Yeah, they do the very fun vampire test, which is a fake vampire test to convince Charlie that his neighbor's not a vampire, but then he accidentally sees that the vampire has no reflection, and then everybody believes there's a vampire now. And then things escalate very quickly from there, because in the next 20 minutes, Evil Ed gets turned into a vampire, and Amy gets kidnapped by the vampire man, who seduces her with a really uncomfortable, sexy dance that goes on for way too long. And then
Well, it's a show for Charlie. That's what it is.
yeah, it is. And then Evil Ed tries to kill Peter Vincent in a very fun scene. And that's when Peter Vincent's character arc really starts, where he starts very slowly turning into his character from the movies. A confident, all-knowing vampire hunter. And
Oh
like,
yeah, no, you should mention where his name came from.
oh yeah,
After we mentioned it.
for those who don't catch it, it's Peter Cushing and Vincent Price's name smushed together. Roddy McDowall, the actor, is a real life protege of Peter Cushing, and they were very close. So it must have been a really fun role, basically playing a parody of your best friend.
Roddy McDowall also gay or bisexual in real life, as is Amy's actress.
Vincent Price was also bisexual, and I'm pretty sure Peter Cushing was too. So, you know, there's a lot of lineage in that movie, even if indirectly.
All of that makes the Peter Vincent character in the remake make absolutely no sense at all because he's a stage magician for some
And he
reason.
already believes
like
in
Chris Angel.
vampires, which is boring.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have a character arc, basically. He just shows up and is like, I'm gonna kill the vampires.
Yeah. I don't remember how it was so easy for this high schooler to just like walk into this magician's hotel room. Like, what? Never mind. The remake is terrible. Don't watch the remake.
Penthouse has very poor security.
The only reason to watch a remake is if you have a crush on Colin Farrell, because he plays the vampire and he acts like a sexy divorced dad in that movie. And he's like, "Hey, I'm a bad boy
Yeah.
vampire, baby." But yeah,
Wears tank tops a lot.
it's not it's not a good movie. It's very 2010s.
There's a lot of good actors in it for some reason.
But getting back to the good version of the movie, the fight scene between Evil Ed and Peter Vincent, and then later between Vampire Amy, Dandridge, and both our protagonists is really, really fun and tense. The main characters are very obviously overmatched, but they use clever vampire hunting tricks to get the upper hand. The vampires get all mad. There's that horrifyingly heartbreaking death scene where Evil Ed gets staked through the heart while in wolf form. And then you see the wolf crawling away like a person, which is just a creepy visual. And then he very slowly turns back into a human while dying and moaning in pain, and like he's reaching out for Peter Vincent's hand, and like with like
Who's also horrified. Like he sells the effects. They don't really need it, but he really sells the effects.
oh yeah, he really
Literally
yeah.
crying. In
Well,
the
yeah,
scene.
he wishes he could help. Like he almost takes his hand, but he's like, "Oh wait, that's a vampire. That's a really bad."
He's a child.
Yeah, he's a child, and it's sad.
Yeah, right. He didn't get into this thinking he was gonna have to kill a kid that day.
Nobody
so
did,
he's
but yeah.
obviously like really fucked up about
Yeah,
it.
it's probably for the best that Charlie didn't have to do that, because that would have fucked him up even more.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then at the
But I did want to mention I like that they had that scene because a lot of the time in horror movies, and sometimes as like just part of the genre, deaths are just kind of shaken off. Like,
yeah.
oh no, he's dead anyway.
yeah, exactly.
So I like that they actually treated it with like some respect and like some gravitas and like just like hold on, someone's actually dead right now.
Oh, another thing I want to mention is the movie's score is awesome. There's a recurring theme throughout the film called Open Window, which is like a groovy, sexy vampire beat that plays a lot of times, and I love it. And then the movie has an awesome theme song over the end credits, which just explains the plot, basically.
An excellent 80s style.
I love those.
Yeah, every movie should be like that. They should have a song at the end that explains the plot.
Like Psycho Gorman.
I think maybe only the Alice Cooper song for part 6 is better.
Yeah, the movie is also pretty funny at times. Not just because of Peter Vincent and Evil Ed. There's a lot of decent gags in there, and
Some of the ones I noticed were Peter Vincent. The beginning before we get to the part with Charlie harassing Amy. It's a Peter Vincent introducing the Fright Night show, and he is playing him. He's playing in the movie, and he's walking up, getting ready to stake a vampire, but he's holding the stake backwards, pointing at his own face rather than the vampire, just to kind of show both dude's incompetent and also nobody gave a shit when making that.
oh yeah, and then he stakes the vampire, and like a million gallons of blood fly into his face, and then it cuts away.
Later, there's a later point where Charlie's watching him stake the vampire, and blood is like little spurts are going on to Peter Vincent's face, and Charlie's just in like wrapped in it. He's sitting in his same chair that he looks at pornography in and spies at the neighbors in, and he is just going, yes, get like
Yeah, he's like, stake him.
weirdly
Stake
erotic
him.
scene, yes, of Charlie
I definitely
watching.
did get that vibe from
Who,
that.
who is the actor who plays Jerry Dandridge again? I forget his name. Does anybody remember? It's fine, but well, he does a great job playing a vampire yuppie scumbag. He's just
Chris Sarandon.
That's him. Susan Sarandon's.
Is that Susan
Yeah, I
Sarandon's
think it.
brother?
Yeah, I think so. Either that or her dad. I forget. I'm pretty sure they're.
He's also Prince Humperdinck in The Princess Bride.
Yes, he is. That's right. Prince Humperdinck, the bad guy. Yeah, he was the bad guy in a lot of '80s movies. He's just got one of those smarmy faces you want to punch, you know?
It's her husband.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
We were both wrong. But yeah, he's really good in the role. He sells, well, basically everything he needs to sell. He's smarmily charming when he's with the mom. He's scary when he's being the vampire. He's genuinely charming at times with Ed and Amy. And he's just generally creepy. He looks like a creepy man. And you know, when he's hamming it up as a vampire, when he sees the sun, he's like, and like you really buy it. You really buy that that's like a vampire meeting its doom. He's great in the role, but he's
Okay, so I was just looking at his wiki, and he because he was worried about being typecast as a villain, he apparently played Jesus in a movie. Just find that really funny.
that is funny.
Demon to some, angel to others.
Yeah.
You know, being typecast was a big problem back then. Not so much these days.
It really was.
But yeah, no, he's great in the role. His boyfriend is great in the role. I love the death scene of every vampire in this movie. Evil Ed's death is just heartbreaking and really impressive effects-wise. Then the boyfriend's death is just like he gets shot 6 times, then he gets back up, and then he grabs both our protagonists and then they stake him to the heart, and he starts turning into sand and slime at the same time, and then a skeleton, and then the skeleton explodes.
And then
like
the
the worst
skull
every time.
goes skittering across the floor, chattering its teeth.
Oh yeah, like it's
incredible.
It's every vampire death at once, and it kicks ass. And then
I got the feeling that this movie was made by special effects people who just kind of strung together a plot in between stuff that looked really cool. Because the whole movie looks really good.
it does. But
The third act, at least, was made by was all SFX.
oh yeah,
people.
like I said, there's not a lot of effects in the first 3/4 of the movie, but then you get all the effects at the end. And it's not a huge budget movie. Like there's maybe 6 locations. There's not that many characters in it. There's not a lot of crowd scenes. There's one crowd scene at the school, and then one crowd scene at the dance floor, and that's it. Every other scene is just our main characters standing there by themselves. And you know there's some effects at the end, but it's not like continuous. It's not like a spectacular like Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, where the whole time they do crazy shit in every scene. So you know, it's a movie that knew where to spend its money. Wow them at the end, you know, so they leave with a good feeling. And I like that the house feels like the '80s version of a vampire castle. It's this big oak-covered staircase and roomy McMansion in the suburbs, and there's like a million clocks for when the sun is rising, so he knows when to go to bed, because it's a big deal for him. No, it's great.
Still must be such a pain in the ass to have all those fucking
Well,
clocks.
that's boyfriend's job.
He forgot the alarm once, I imagine. There was a big argument, and then he came home. He's like, all right, I have 50 fucking clocks now, Dandridge, so you're not going to miss it again.
Are you happy?
Yeah, that his like not dying when he's shot that many times made me wonder about the lore in that movie, like in a good way, because he's not a vampire, right? Because he can go out in the sun.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We don't know what he is. He's a little mystery. And, they never really know what the vampire rules are. There's only one line about that where Peter Vincent says that they can possibly free Amy if they kill the head vampire before she's fully turned. And Charlie says, "Are you sure?" And he says, "Well, everything else has been like the movies so far." Like, they don't really know what they're doing. They're just guessing.
It did work, though.
Yeah, it did. You get a nice happy ending. And a really awesome, fiery bat monster death scene.
And then they get late.
Yeah.
Now, about the ending, we see that Peter Vincent is back on TV. So how did he get his job back?
It's implied that the reason he lost it is this: he just wanted to show old-fashioned horror movies on his show. But when he gets it back, he's hosting the type of movies he was against, like the 80s slasher movie. He's hosting a movie that's like about an alien terrorizing a high school. It's like a combination of both 80s horror trends, aliens, and 80s slashers killing teenagers. And so, I guess that he probably begged for his job back, but he got over himself, more importantly. He got over his glory days a little bit because he saw the real thing. And he's like, maybe not vampires isn't so bad.
I always thought that he went back to the studio and just threatened to kill everyone.
He's tasted blood once, and he will taste it again.
Just lays down the blood-stained steak. I was like, don't make me use this.
The real vampires are studio executives.
They are. Is there any other scene or theme that anybody really liked in the film?
I had a reading.
Lay it on me.
This might take a minute. Just bear with me. All right. So some of the things that I noticed, Dandridge's first two victims, the two women, it says on the news that they were decapitated, right?
Yes.
Which presumably it's, hiding dental records. But a little bit later, we mentioned that Charlie has porn in his room. The centerfolds, or whatever the image of the woman is, her head is covered up as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of picking up on this theme of faceless women, these faceless victims. And then you get this whole thing like with Evil Ed, when Vincent burns his face with the cross, he's talking about his face being changed. And then you get those cool vampire teeth effects. And what I was kind of thinking about with this kind of the themes of the movie and this idea of people's identity being taken away was a bit of a bummer, but what was going on at the time, the AIDS crisis, and this idea of, having all these literally, like for the media, faceless victims, people whose real identities, the media just wants to ignore. And you get to this idea that in late stage infection that there can be a lot of like really bad changes to people's faces, and I'd wondered if it was kind of alluding to that as well.
That does remind me. Evil Ed's actor apparently went on to do gay porn, so not only was the character probably gay, but clearly the actor was.
So this is kind of where I get into it feels problematic, because it's basically you have Dandridge as the basically gay man who's going around spreading this evil thing and killing people. And the other thing that I was kind of thinking about with it, this is where it gets for a stretch, is what does Peter Vincent represent? And I think that in this context of it being an AIDS metaphor, Peter Vincent is obviously Ronald Reagan, because he is supposedly in charge, completely incompetent for handling the crisis. And then by the end of things, which this had happened in real life, he gets focused on sci-fi and crime, which, the Star Wars program that he put out, and the crime bill, which came out, I think, a year or two before this movie.
Yes, for anyone young who's listening to this, he actually made a program called Star Wars after the movie was a thing.
Yeah, well...
Yes, literally a giant space laser to shoot down nuclear missiles that got shot at us.
Not to defend Reagan, but it's very widely speculated that by the end of his presidency, his Alzheimer's had started kicking in, and he was just off his rocker with some of his later ideas, like Reaganomics and the Star Wars program were like, even Republicans were like, oh, I don't know about this one, Chief.
I like that reading of the movie, other than the Peter Vincent part, but I think it's more about saying that that idea is really dumb, because I think that people have forgotten that people with AIDS were pariahs. Nobody wanted to get
Oh yeah,
anywhere near them. There was a lot of paranoia and fear.
they were monstered. They were treated like monsters, and even if the movie wasn't trying to comment on that, it's entirely possible it was informed by these things. Hey, there's no way they didn't know they were making a movie with some gay subtext in it. There's no way, and it's hard to discuss. It's hard to discuss gay people in the '80s without talking about AIDS, even though that is kind of a nasty stereotype. But I mean, the two
Yeah,
were
well,
left.
it was a thing they were all dealing with involuntarily.
Yeah,
You've got too Ed's death scene, and if you add this reading to it of Peter Vincent wants to touch him, which at the time, like you said, people with AIDS were pariahs, and it was like you can't even touch people with AIDS. There was that whole thing where Diana visited somebody with AIDS and held their hand, and it was a huge big deal.
Yeah, why we use those paper toilet seat covers? Those started getting really popular around the 80s.
Idiots use those. They made me so angry.
yeah, waste of
Yeah,
paper.
but people honestly thought that you could catch AIDS from toilet seats.
Yeah,
Well, and also just sit on the seat. It makes me so mad. Some people pee on it. Like,
Yeah, when they hover, you
yes.
can't aim if you're hovering. If you're gonna do that, wipe it up.
Also, who cares if your butt gets
Disgusting.
dirty? You're gonna shower, aren't you? Like every day. Like,
I mean, you could get like a rash if something's on the seat, but that's about it.
yeah, but you look at it, you can visually inspect and be like, okay, clean enough.
Yeah, exactly. But
I mean, poop is already coming out of your butt.
Freud, I think that
It's
reading
not
is
the cleanest spot to begin
I think that
with.
reading is really interesting. I don't know how many times vampires and AIDS have been linked directly in fiction, but there's definitely like obvious metaphors because like vampires are often coded to represent sexuality in various ways.
Well, vampirism is an STI. So,
Yeah, exactly. So like, I don't think there's ever been literally a movie where they equate the two concepts too directly, but it would be entirely possible that the scriptwriter or director, thought, vampires and AIDS are kind of like the same thing if you think about it.
I think if they did it directly, it would just be too on the nose and too ridiculous, and also kind of fucking tasteless.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying I don't think it's ever been done that directly. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's like
But as an illusion, yeah, it
It's
works.
like I don't want to get too far off topic, but if you guys ever read X-Men, there was the Legacy virus, which targeted only people with the X gene. But since the X-Men were very obvious stand-ins for sexual minorities at the time, that was basically them in the comics talking about AIDS without talking about AIDS, and it's very possible this movie was trying to do that as well. But I don't know. I don't know if anybody working on it did that consciously or not.
It could have been an accident, because to tie it back to the gay subtext, my friend found a quote from Chris Sarandon. It's kind of short, so I'll read it. He said, I didn't get any sense of it being anything other than Renfield and Dracula. I think there was sort of an asexual quality to the relationship that was sort of borderline homoerotic, but not in the sense that it was creepy. For the scene in which Jerry pulls down the window shade and looks at it though Billy is about to perform oral sex on him, Stark remembered, I'm cleaning his hand, and Tom Holland, the director, said, no, get down on your knees. And I thought, okay, Tom. Then when I saw the film, I thought, ooh, okay. It's more like a sexual ooh than a ew.
No,
Gross.
no, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so we're running ashore on time, so I assume everybody here would recommend Fright Night for most audiences. It's a pretty, even though the sexual politics are a little ooky sometimes, it's a very fun film for everybody, and it's not that scary.
Yeah, and I think it's great that queer people are kind of owning it now. I mean, like taking it and saying this is ours, like Nightmare 2, and
Lost Boys.
how that is like afterwards thought of as gay, but at the time apparently nobody thought it was. But I don't know how much I believe that. I mean, the people who are making it.
So what I would recommend is to watch this movie and then immediately afterwards watch the remake. And then at least the remake will be fun because you'll be comparing it to the first movie and being like, oh, why the fuck did they do that? Oh my god, this guy's in it. Wait, but why is he's just not gonna do okay. It's a real roller coaster of just being like, why was this made? Who
You need a
wanted
palate
this?
cleanser after. You should watch an Ernest cartoon, at least one.
Yes,
The
yes.
palate cleanser is the band played on, unfortunately.
Jay Ballman once said when he reviewed the remake originally that every single thing they changed made the movie less interesting. Like,
Yes, that's absolutely true.
Well, they made the girlfriend better.
They made her better in that, like,
she's a person.
the girl in the first, in the
There's
first
a
movie,
woman in
she's
this
not
movie,
even
it's
a
worse.
person.
She,
Sorry.
Yeah.
she's a person,
She's
but
not.
she's
She's
not.
basically a mannequin in the first movie, but in the second movie, she's not a great character.
Yeah.
But at least she's a character.
That's true. She's not likable, which is, well, girl
one
characters don't
is.
have to be likable in movies,
Th-
but
there's-
if she's the one who's going to be in danger, we should like her. We should care, you know?
Who
Well, Ed
who
was
was
too.
likable in that movie?
Nobody. Everybody's
So,
a...
the Tony
Toni
Collette.
Collette.
Tony
yes.
Collette. Tony
But
Collette
she's
is
not
always
really.
likable.
She's not in it that much. She's just there to be like, I'm a mom.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Anyway, bye.
When you look at the cast and the budget, the remake looks awesome, but then you watch it and it's like very boring. So Freud, I assume you'd
Yeah.
also recommend the original Fright Night?
Yeah, I think I would. I think that it's fun enough to where it's fun enough to where it outweighs the flaws.
Oh yeah, there are
basically.
flaws.
Like there are a lot of it's one of those weird things where there's a lot of problematic older movies, but because they're of the time, they get slightly more of a pass, I think. And also you can reclaim them and read new things into them.
You can also enjoy things that are problematic. Just think about why it's problematic while you do.
We're gonna try not to recommend movies that are too upsetting or problematic, because this is a fun podcast for fun movies. But yeah, it's fine to enjoy things with some problems in them.
And like, it's good as long as you think about it, and you're aware that it's problematic and like what the times were then and like what's changed since then.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Definitely.
I hope this was a productive discussion. We're just about out of time, so thank you for listening to Spook Doodles.
Oh, you're so cool, Lerdiac.
I'm so cool. No, I'm just kidding.
Please like and subscribe to the channel.
Spook Doodles was made possible thanks to generous patrons like Adhesion, Christopher Smith, Church, Clayton Scholler, Count Trashula, Jetpack Jesus, Joe Nothing Art, John Gonzalez, Lauren S., Madman, Michael Kickin' Rad Corliss, MZ, Stephen Tyndall, Vincent Modica, Choco 1980, Flavor Fibe, Freud, Graventy, Cat Miller, Leah, M. Sinistrari, Mike Dunn, P. Coffee, Possum Jim, and Sinister C. If you would like to become a patron, go to Screamstream Official on patreon.com and please consider donating.